The Dreamshaper was barricaded in his bathroom, his back pushed against the door. Sweat dripped down his face, the kind that comes with sheer terror. If only the door can hold a little longer, he'd be able to buy himself just a few more seconds. Boom, boom, boom. The door rocked in its frame. The floorboards warped under the massive weight of the monster on the other side. The Dreamshaper's heart thundered. Nausea bubbled up in his gut. He could hear the voice slurring, liquid tongue moving over liquid teeth.
Open the door. You never do anything right.
It was a revolting sound, like ooze being forced through a pipe. Another thump, and the door splintered. The Dreamshaper was flung towards the cold tiles of his bathroom floor. He turned just in time to see the monster bulging into the room behind him. Nearly 8 feet tall, a hideous, bulbous humanoid creature made of murky slime. Wait, please! He didn't get to finish his sentence. The hand clamped around his face, vice-like. He felt that awful, familiar burning sensation from being in contact with the slime. The creature pulled him into a bear hug, forcing the acidic slime to cover the Dreamshaper's body, eating into his skin, his flesh, and soon, his bones. He'd scream, but his jaw, tongue, and lungs were already gone. He closed his eyes and waited for the inevitable. He woke up screaming, like most mornings. When his heart settled, he got up and trudged into the bathroom. The door was still broken. He'd pay to get it fixed later. Just another thing on the endless list, he thought, as he brushed his teeth. Work was terrible, as always. His manager screamed at him until he was red in the face about some report not filed, some quota not met, some butt not kissed. The Dreamshaper had gotten good at nodding and apologizing. Not that it ever ended the degradation early.
You never do anything right,
his boss barked at him in front of the entire bullpen. That night, the Dreamshaper was cooking some instant noodles in his cramped kitchen. He shuddered as he saw a fat cockroach scurrying across the floor and up the wall. He'd sent who knows how many emails to his landlord about it, but he never heard back from them. It seemed like the infestation in his building was only getting worse. Just as he'd finished pouring his boiling water into the dry cluster of noodles in a plastic cup, he heard more scuttling inside one of the low-level cabinets. Great, more bugs, he thought. He leaned over and gingerly slid open the door. The last thing he was expecting was a living tide of hideous rats to come surging from the cabinet, immediately crawling up his legs and digging their long yellow teeth into his flesh. He fell onto the ground, screaming, as the carpet of hungry fur covered him, tearing him to shreds. Before long, there'd be nothing left of him but scraps of fabric and nibbled bones. And then he woke up, sweating, hyperventilating, exhausted. Nothing ever changed. It was a performance evaluation day at work. 2 narrow-browed men from corporate dissected his every move, picking apart every statistic in which he seemed to woefully underperform. It felt like having his life and pride hung, bloody and struggling from a meat hook in front of him, while 2 eager butchers hacked away. Later that night, the Dreamshaper lay in bed and closed his eyes. He was frozen in bed as a decrepit surgeon with scalpels for fingers loomed over him, the mad doctor's beady eyes barely visible over his surgical mask. The Dreamshaper couldn't move, but he could feel every sliver of pain as the surgeon carved into him with his rusty, bladed fingernails to catalog everything that was inside. Things had gotten so bad that he'd simply tried to avoid sleeping. Endless cups of black coffee, knocking back no-dos like they were M&Ms, pounding Red Bulls until his heart felt like an engine about to overclock and burst into flames. He avoided going home at all costs, fearing that the temptation to go to bed and start another nightmare would be too great. Instead, he'd ride the city buses around at night, just to feel something. But when the bus stopped at a red light, the Dreamshaper saw a familiar face. A huge, grinning woman approaching the bus in the dark, 8 or 9 feet tall and almost as wide, with skin sickly and pallid. She held a long, filthy tube gripped in one of her enormous hands. She grinned her idiot grin and waved it for emphasis. In a previous dream, she'd shoved it down his throat and pumped so much hot white liquid into him that his stomach had burst. The thought made him want to vomit. He ran to the driver and told him to floor it, but as he approached the bus's cab, the driver disappeared. The woman with the tube was outside the door now, forcing her fingers through the closed divider, trying to pry it open. The Dreamshaper screamed and woke up. A woman was sitting next to him, looking concerned. Oh, right, he recognized her. It was the nice lady from accounts at work. He'd always wanted to strike up a conversation with her, but he'd never plucked up the courage. He figured that everything that was going on in his life would make any kind of intimacy effectively impossible. But here, on the bus, in the warm glow of relief that the big woman had disappeared, they had a warm and earnest conversation. One that almost made him forget what a living nightmare, literally, his life had become. By the end of the conversation, she surprised him by asking whether he'd like to go grab dinner sometime, her treat. And perhaps despite himself, he said yes. Maybe it could be the first step to getting his life back on track, finding somebody who believed in him. Someone could find out about his weird, insane problem and help him find a solution. Anything seemed possible. Anything. The Dreamshaper was woken by a rotting, leprous old woman lunging down his hallway towards him and digging her filthy fingernails into his skin. She cackled in her mud-caked throat as she prepared to peel him like an orange. He sprung up, alone, in his bedroom, his clothes and bedsheets stained with sweat. He glanced at the clock and dragged himself out of bed. The date was one of the high points of his adult life. They went to a new Vietnamese restaurant that had opened up in town, enjoying some bowls of pho and knocking back a few drinks. They laughed and chatted and discussed their lives, even finding out that they'd actually grown up in the same small town, just going to different schools before moving out into the city. He was able to live in the fantasy of a normal life until the date came to an end, and the woman asked if she'd be able to come back to his place. That felt like taking an arrow of ice through the heart. Should he break it off and potentially upset her? Or bring her back and drag her into the firing line of the monsters that came for him every night? He decided on a half measure. He brought her back to his place, but told her that he'd need her to sleep on a fold-out sofa bed because of his night terrors. He was worried that would be a deal-breaker, but strangely, she actually went for it. Maybe if he was in the middle of one of his episodes, she could wake him up and save him again. The Dreamshaper woke up in the middle of the night. Nothing. So far, so good. He went to the bathroom. No lingering monsters, no rats, no vicious blob men. Maybe this woman was his lucky charm, the key to him actually living a normal life. It filled him with such a beautiful sense of warmth and comfort, a feeling he'd never before experienced. As he returned to his bedroom, he saw her laying there on the futon, her back rising and falling softly. He felt the strongest urge to walk over there and lay a gentle hand on her shoulder, a tribute to his guardian angel. So he did. The girl jolted up in an instant, but she wasn't the girl from work. Her eyes were wrong. Her fingertips slit into long, razor-edged claws, and the ruin that was once her mouth was full of broken, shard-like fangs. She lunged at him. All he could do was scream. The Dreamshaper lay on a gurney in an immaculate white room, a series of belts strapped over his legs and chest to keep him in place. His eyes shifted rapidly under his eyelids as he wandered through the depths of REM sleep. A skein of wires dangled from the suction cups attached to the Dreamshaper's scalp, siphoning off data. Here, he wasn't whatever name he went by on the outside. Here, he was SCP-781. Not 10 feet away, beyond a solid steel divider, a group of SCP Foundation guards with nightsticks and cattle prods were fighting for their lives. Their opponent, the very same monster that was lurking on the Dreamshaper's couch. It hissed and screeched, swiping with its deadly claws and gnashing with its broken glass teeth, blood flecking its tangled blonde hair. Two of the guards were seriously injured in the effort to subdue it. A guard on the nearby mezzanine eventually managed to land a kill shot through the monster's skull. In a nearby room, Dr. Glass, the head of the SCP Foundation Psychology Department and lead researcher on the SCP-781 case, watched 3 different monitors. One showed the footage of the battle with the living nightmare and the guards. Another showed a live feed of the Dreamshaper, SCP-781, lying in his placid, chemical sleep. The third monitor showed a readout of the data being gathered from all the diagnostic machines attached to the sleeping anomaly. Dr. Glass nodded at the lines creeping up the graph.
Seems like a particularly long dream preceded this manifestation,
he mumbled to himself as he took note.
Whether that affects the manifestation's strength? Need to explore that further.
The next morning, Dr. Glass conducted a debriefing interview with the Dreamshaper, a song and dance they'd done many times before. Certain details were consistent. Whatever horrendous nightmare SCP-781 had, it became a real, physical entity and attempted to attack and kill the Dreamshaper, along with anyone who tried to defend him. On occasions when the Foundation hadn't made a concerted effort to defend him, the nightmares had often succeeded, gruesomely taking his life, only for him to reappear unharmed 12 hours later to play out the whole sick charade again.
And you're positive you can't remember any of the details of the dream, 781?
Dr. Glass asked, trying his best to maintain a calm and sympathetic posture. The Dreamshaper sighed and hung his head.
I swear to God, I'd tell you if I did, Doc, he said. You know my memory's not so good with that kind of stuff.
Dr. Glass made a note, saying,
His memory repression was likely developed as a coping mechanism to deal with his frequent painful deaths.
After the interview, Dr. Glass decided to make a few updates to containment procedures in order to test the parameters of the Dreamshaper's anomalous curse. After gaining approval from the site directors, he posted some of the site's most elite guards around the Dreamshaper as he slept. This worked better than expected. When, in the dead of night, fleshy tendrils covered in rending thorns slithered out through every crack in the room, the guards were able to use high-frequency katanas to effortlessly slice them to pieces. The Dreamshaper had his first night of uninterrupted sleep, perhaps in his entire life. This pattern continued for days, then weeks, as Dr. Glass was delighted to see that the Dreamshaper's mental health and general emotional state seemed to be improving, a natural side effect of not regularly experiencing the violent deaths of yourself and everyone around you. In debriefing interviews, Dr. Glass found that despite the improvement in the Dreamshaper's mental health, his memory was still foggy around the subject of his mysterious dreams. In one moment of lucidity, he claimed that he believed he is perhaps where dreams come from, some oniric Sandman-esque entity who'd somehow incarnated in the physical world. Could he perhaps be connected to the thankfully far less dangerous dreams of all of humanity the world over? The possibilities were staggering. And yet, Dr. Glass, being one of the most mentally intuitive members of Foundation senior staff, couldn't help but wonder whether he was knocking on a door that shouldn't be opened. Given that the Dreamshaper came back every time he died with at least some memories of his time before, Dr. Glass's superiors were floating the idea of turning the Dreamshaper into some kind of reusable D-class subject. Someone who could be put into lethal experiments again and again and again and give first-hand details of the matter afterwards. To Dr. Glass, it smacked of the darkest forms of curiosity that often led to Foundation cautionary tales. Clearly, his superiors lacked these reservations, as they put one of Dr. Glass's more junior colleagues, Dr. Cooper, in charge of finding out exactly what made the Dreamshaper tick. He conducted a series of intensive interviews with the anomaly, asking him, sometimes with the aid of drug therapy, what he could remember about the contents of the nightmares he was actually able to survive thanks to Foundation intervention. At first, the Dreamshaper was evasive, as usual. He claimed that he couldn't remember anything, like some thick fog was covering these recollections, and he just couldn't make out the shapes on the other side of it. Dr. Cooper pushed, demanding to know more, until suddenly, a dark expression came over the Dreamshaper's face. It was as though some mental switch had flipped, and despite nothing physically changing about the man, Dr. Cooper could almost tell he was looking at a different person now. He made vigorous notes as the Dreamshaper spoke.
I'm gonna torture you, he said. You want to know my nightmares? That's gonna be the best way for you to really know, Doc.
Dr. Cooper had a follow-up question, but he never got to ask it. The Dreamshaper lunged onto the table and snatched the doctor's ballpoint pen out of his hand and began viciously stabbing him in the throat with it as the unfortunate researcher tried to gurgle out a plea. Guards were quick on the draw, raising their rifles and pumping the Dreamshaper full of lead. But it wasn't fast enough to save Dr. Cooper. When the Dreamshaper reappeared 12 hours later, he had no recollection of murdering the researcher. He actually seemed extremely distressed when Dr. Glass showed him the security footage of the killing taking place. Since then, Dr. Glass has added an official note to the SCP-781 psychological evaluation file, reading,
As this outburst is the first sign of anger or hostility SCP-781 has shown, it is perhaps prudent to refrain from questioning SCP-781 further about its nightmares.
Dreams and nightmares can be a quite interesting subject. They can reveal the greatest fears and worries lurking deep within our subconscious, perhaps things we don't even know are waiting down there in the dark, underpinning our every action, our every thought. The tragic existence of SCP-781 shows what a hellish life you can have when your greatest fear truly is fear itself. One moment, please. Sorry about that. The next time you wake up from a terrible nightmare in a cold sweat, eyes darting between the shadows in your bedroom, just remember, at least your nightmares are the ones you truly can wake up from. Now check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-1550, Dr. Wondertainment's Custom Pets, Top 12 SCP Animals compilation.